Donald Trump's first State of the Union address of his second presidency afforded him an opportunity to hail his own record, while also keeping true to his past as a media personality. Now, Reggie Cecchini is here in Washington with some of the highlights. So, Reggie, Trump's address really seemed to include his take on the economy, but it didn't seem to match the average American's view.
Yeah, Miranda, that's right. I mean, we heard the president come out last night, and talk about how he saw an economy that is roaring back, an economy that he believes is working for everybody, except the polling consistently shows that the overwhelming majority of Americans feel that life is simply too expensive and that things are not working for the average person. And there is a bit of a disconnect here. Yes, wages are going up in the United States. Yes, inflation did tick down, and yes, employment is doing better, but the average American isn't paying attention to things like the Consumer Price Index or GDP. They're looking at prices at grocery stores and gas stations, and while things may be doing better, it suggests that Americans haven't caught up to where the actual American economy is here. And there is a potential risk here for President Trump to continuously be telling the Americans, look, you're wrong with the way that you're looking at the economy because I say it's doing better. That's a strategy that Joe Biden was using in 2024, and ultimately it led to many Americans moving away from Democrats and electing Donald Trump. So in a midterm year, when there are many vulnerable Republicans up for election, the message that came out last night may have a hard time resonating with the average voter.
Well, Reggie, how well do you think Trump then appealed to, say, independent voters out there and those who may be on the fence as we head into the midterms?
That's going to be a difficult climb and maybe a difficult sell for the president. He is underwater when it comes to some of those demographics that moved away from the Democrats in 2024 and went towards Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and particularly with independents. We've seen them walking away, not only on issues to do with the economy, but issues to do with the entire Trump agenda here. And while Donald Trump may be regaining or building back some of the momentum within the roots of the Republican Party, it may come at the expense of independents. And when margins are always incredibly tight and you're winning an election based on a few points here or a few points there, the inability to bring back the people who don't really register with one side or the other can have a significant outcome. So if Donald Trump is selling a message that's registering with Republicans and not independents, that could become problematic in November.
All right, so let's talk about some of his messages from last night then. How do you think his message on immigration landed?
Well, I mean, look, it landed well with Republicans, and we saw at one point the longest round of applause for the night came at a point when Donald Trump said the first duty, quote, of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. All Republicans in the room stood up and clapped. All Democrats remained seated, and it was sort of a goated moment. It was a gotcha moment for Democrats where Donald Trump turned around to look at the Democrats that were sitting in the audience saying, you should be ashamed of yourselves, but that is because Democrats overwhelmingly see Trump's immigration policy as something that is not working, and that's actually where most of America sits as well. Trump is down by 10 points on the immigration agenda. But I think what wasn't said last night may speak the loudest. There was no mention of Minneapolis. There was no mention of the ICE deployments. There was no mention of the deaths of 2 American citizens in Minneapolis, except for Democrats that were shouting back at the president, telling him, quote, you killed Americans. So that was kind of the sharpest moment that we saw last night. But Donald Trump chose his kind of angles very carefully on where to talk about immigration. He talked about the border. He talked about statistics that may fall out of line with reality. Again, those are things that shore him up with Republicans, but it may not work well with Democrats and independents.
All right, so most of the speech did focus on domestic issues, Reggie, but there was a key foreign policy matter that did come up. So what can you tell us about that?
Right. There was that kind of veiled message here about Iran. And this comes as the American government is posturing a huge military buildup in and around the country. Last night, we heard Donald Trump say that he wants diplomacy to work. And we know that there are key talks that are supposed to take place again on Thursday, mediated talks. We also heard Donald Trump say that he wants Iran to say those magic words, quote, we will not have a nuclear weapon. The issue here is, Miranda, Iran has said that in the past. They have, in the last several months, said that they have no interest in rebuilding a nuclear weapon or going after a nuclear weapon. Now, whether that can be believed or not is one thing, but it shows that, Donald Trump is kind of parroting talking points that are not really on the record here. And it's a question. Was Donald Trump doing this as a kind of soft sell to the American public? Look, we're working through diplomacy, but if that doesn't work, we may have to take this to the next step, and that could potentially become some kind of limited or larger strike in Iran. So this was the buildup for what many people have been fearing is going to turn into an all-out war.
All right, Reggie, before I let you go here, who were some of the notable people who did attend, but also who did not attend?
Right. So in attendance, and there's always a group of different faces here. I mean, we saw the U.S. Gold hockey team, including awards handed to some of the members there. We saw a 100-year-old veteran who received a medal. We saw another member of the military who was injured during the operation in Venezuela who also received a medal. Donald Trump kind of using this as a bit of theatrics here. Also in the audience, though, were a number of Epstein victims. And one thing we did not hear from Donald Trump last night in his speech was anything about the Epstein files. Also in attendance, 3 of the Supreme Court justices who overturned Donald Trump's tariff policy. He excoriated the Supreme Court for doing that at one moment. And there was also a significant number of Democrats not in the room. Dozens of them opted to skip the speech, hold their own kind of counter-programming event, which led to some moments of where Democrats could have hit back at Donald Trump. There were empty seats. It's a question as to whether or not those empty seats spoke the words that the Democrats wanted them to.
All right, that is our Washington correspondent, Reggie Cecchini. Reggie, thanks so much for joining us.